Welcome to the Deep Dive. Today, we're really digging into what it takes, what it means to think about becoming a missionary.
Yeah, and our guide for this is going to be the book Ask a Missionary by John McVeigh.
Right. And what's great about this book is it's not just one person's opinion. It pulls together advice, stories, experiences from over 100 missionaries.
It's like getting advice straight from the field, really. And it's got endorsements from some pretty respected people, too, doesn't it?
It does, like Don Parrott from the Finishers Project, Mission Next, Dr. John Crouch from In His Image International, and Scott Moreau, he's a professor at Wheaton College, edits the Evangelical Missions Quarterly.
So these aren't lightweights. They see the value in this practical ground-level advice.
Exactly. So if you've ever wondered about missionary work, maybe felt a nudge, this deep dive is for you. We're aiming to unpack some of the key realities.
And it's interesting, the book uses different Bible translations, NIV, ESV, NLT. It feels like they're really trying to ground all this practical stuff in, solid belief, connecting the doing with the why.
Yeah, good point. It came out in 2010, and it covers, well, pretty much everything. From the get-go, like training and finding funding,
to the more personal side, like being single on the field or going as a couple, maybe with kids.
Right, all of that. And the challenges, definitely the challenges. It even touches on retirement, which you might not think about initially.
We're going to hear from quite a mix of voices, too. People like Elizabeth Elliot, obviously huge figure, her work in Ecuador.
Phyllis Kilborn, WC International, that's Worldwide Evangelization for Christ, Rainbows of Hope. Don Parrott again, Neil Pirolo, who focuses on supporting the senders.
Jack Wolkel, too, big connection to the Urbana Student Missions Conference. And others like Jim Ramo, Bill Stearns, David Stevens. A lot of experience packed in here.
It's that diversity that makes it so rich, I think. Everyone's journey is different context, different ministry focus.
Totally. Elizabeth Elliot's story, facing such loss in Ecuador, profound lessons there. And then someone like Don Parrott working with folks maybe considering missions later in life. It shows there's no single mold.
And to kind of grab you right away, the book throws out these imagined scenarios, really vivid stuff.
Oh, yeah. Like what?
Okay, picture this. Opening an Italian restaurant way up in the mountains in China. Not just for food, but as a way to build relationships. Run Bible classes right there.
Wow, okay. Not what you typically picture.
Or imagine working in Manila, maybe connecting with someone really on the margins, like a pimp. And through that relationship, seeing his whole network, like 65 people, find faith and start a church.
That's incredible. Talk about unconventional.
One more. Working with coffee farmers in Uganda during a drought, encouraging them to pray for rain in Jesus' name, and then seeing it actually rain.
These examples just shatter stereotypes, don't they, about what missionary work looks like?
Right. It's not always standing behind a pulpit. It's relational, often uses everyday skills.
Finding ministry opportunities in unexpected places really broadens the definition.
And the author, John McVeigh, he shares his own God moment, something that happened on a train in China that really solidified his own calling.
That personal touch is important. It reminds you it's often a personal journey, maybe not always dramatic, but undeniable.
Which leads us right into our first big topic, guidance. How do you even figure out if this is what you're supposed to do?
Yeah, where do you start?
Well, one of the first voices we hear is Merle. Spent over 20 years with Sim, serving in mission, and his big emphasis is getting that inner conviction first.
Before looking at circumstances.
Exactly, and seeking godly counsel. Those are the first steps, he says. Get your heart right with God. Talk to wise mentors, then look outward.
That makes sense. It's foundational. Merle uses this analogy, right? Like a father clearly telling his child what he expects.
Yeah, he says the closer you are to God, the clearer the leading. You won't have to chase signs so much.
It boils down to that relationship then. Knowing God well is key to knowing his will for you. Are you spending time with him? Removing distractions?
If you're walking close, Merle suggests, the guidance will be, well, unmistakable.
It's not about finding some secret code. It's about relationship. That two-way street. You seek him, you get better at recognizing his voice.
Elizabeth Elliot's take is interesting, too. She talks about it often, starting with seeing a need.
And realizing God's equipped you to meet it.
Yeah. Less of a big flash, more of a gradual thing. A growing desire, a sense of peace, seeing doors open.
That's really practical. Shifts the focus from just waiting to actively looking at the world and your own gifts. I like her idea of God drafting people, too. He takes the initiative sometimes.
But it's not always smooth sailing, getting confirmation. Nathan, who served in Albania, talks about friendly fire.
Oof. Opposition from people you expect support from. Family, friends, church.
Exactly. That could be really tough, discouraging.
That's a hard reality. People might mean well, maybe they're worried or just don't get it. Nathan says you gotta stand firm in your conviction, but also be willing to process the criticism, right? Even if it hurts.
Yeah, he mentions that Proverbs verse, wounds from a friend can be trusted. Sometimes there's truth, even in hard feedback.
And just feeling discouraged is normal. Dennis Schuker from OMS International reminds us, hey, we live in a fallen world. Discouragement happens.
It's not about being super spiritual and gift to it. That's a myth the book tackles.
Right. Schuker says the key is staying close to Jesus. Prayer, word, patience. And maybe dealing with underlying stuff, praying against spiritual opposition too. It's active, not passive.
Jack Vogel's story is a great example of guidance taking unexpected turns. He had his whole plan for a Christian camp.
And the Rockies, I think.
Yeah. But then this undeniable leading towards ministry with Muslim people, North Africa, Middle East, totally different direction.
Wow. That really shows how God's plans can override ours. I need that humility, that flexibility to pivot, even when it's surprising.
Okay, what if you feel like, I don't have enough education for this? Jack Vogel tackles that too.
And he has dyslexia himself, right?
He does, and he says, look, lack of formal education doesn't automatically disqualify you. He points to his own ministry and this African leader in Kenya with similar challenges who's doing amazing work.
That's so encouraging. God using perceived weakness to show his strength. It's not always about the degrees, but about connection, love, authenticity.
He also brings up something really vital, your support team, the senders.
Ah, yes. Just as important as the ones who go. It's a team effort. He recommends global opportunities, globalops.org, for learning more about building that team.
Yeah, the sports team analogy works well. Players on the field need the support crew. It's a partnership.
Okay, so do you need to know exactly which country God is calling you to before you start?
David Smith from WEC International says, it varies. Some people, like Hudson Taylor, had a clear, lifelong call to one place, China.
But others moved around, like C.T. Studd.
Exactly. And then you have Paul in the New Testament, often led more immediately by the Spirit. So no single formula.
That's kind of reassuring, actually. You don't need the whole map lit route from day one. Be open, be responsive.
And David gives practical ideas for seeking clarity. Pray about activities that excite you. Evaluate your spiritual gifts. Use resources like Operation World to learn about needs.
Those are things you can do. Actively participate in discerning. Daydream prayerfully. Assess your gifts honestly. Get informed. Connect your passions and gifts to real needs.
What about short-term trips? Helpful or not?
Merle suggests they can be really valuable, especially longer ones, like several months to a year. He said his own short-term experiences really shaped his long-term path.
And Neil Perolo has this cool idea. Write down circumstantial miracles. Those little coincidences that feel like God confirming things.
I love that. A way to track God's hand in the journey. But Perolo also brings it back, doesn't he? It's less about finding a magic answer.
And more about drawing close to God, that relationship again.
Right. Guidance flows from intimacy.
Okay, let's shift to training. Big question. To train or not to train?
And the consensus in the book seems to be train. Appropriate training makes you more effective.
Yeah, it's not just about a piece of paper, but equipping yourself skills, knowledge, spiritual maturity for what's ahead.
The key is appropriate, though. What you need depends on your role, the context. The goal is preparation for effective ministry.
What about skipping college? Jack Vogel generally advises against it, says education shapes you, gives you skills.
But there's another perspective, too, right? That the Holy Spirit teaches and God trains you in service.
Yeah, and that interesting comment about some seminary grads needing deprogramming for the field realities.
It highlights that tension. Formal learning versus experiential learning, guided by the Spirit, both have value. Lisa from International Teams warns against shortcuts, though. Be intentional in prep.
Lisa also says, prepare as best you can, then go. Don't wait for perfect preparedness. It might never come. Holistic approach needed.
Good advice. For late teens, Jack Vogel suggests university first, then short trips during breaks. And Christian campus groups are huge for formation.
That makes sense. Build a foundation, get exposure. And the book notes, a spouse's skills are a huge asset too. Dale Pugh mentioned that.
So many ways to train. Bible school, correspondence, university, grad school, just practical ministry experience.
Right. It depends on the person and the path. Tom liked Christian University for the combo of a degree and Bible skills. Mert used correspondence for flexibility. Ruth went to Bible school despite having dyslexia.
Shows there's no one-size-fits-all. Thomas Hale suggests training before and during furlough. Preparation reduces stress and mistakes.
And Mike from WAC says learn from long-term folks on short-term trips. Get that practical wisdom.
Definitely. That mentorship is invaluable.
What about helpful majors in college? David Smith lists things like teaching, especially ESL.
Computer tech, anthropology, humanities, business. And he really stresses language learning.
Yeah, language comes up a lot. Is a graduate degree needed? Bethany says it depends on the work and context.
Makes sense. Tailor it to the need.
Language school itself is vital, not just for the words, but the culture. Jack Volkel points out learning styles differ, languages differ. Maybe even get a language aptitude test.
That's practical. And he stresses asking people to correct your mistakes. Don't be like that older missionary who wouldn't listen.
Huh? Yeah, got to be humble enough to learn. Jim from the Mission Society brings up culture shock, recommends good pre-field training, mentions MTI in Colorado Springs.
Culture shock is real. Training that tackles it head-on with coping strategies is so important for adjusting well.
And having realistic expectations. Mike warns against assuming people are just waiting to hear the gospel. You need dependence on God.
That's a crucial reality check. It's God's work, His power.
Tim from Whitecliff wished he knew more about spiritual warfare beforehand. Recommends Neil Anderson's Victory Over the Darkness and Dean Sherman's Spiritual Warfare for Every Christian.
Recognizing that unseen dimension is important, those resources sound helpful.
Bethany wished she'd been more prepared for things like boredom or how living cross-culturally can surface hidden personal issues.
Adding that layer of emotional and personal reality is valuable. It's not all high adventure.
The section wraps up, reminding us God prepares people in diverse ways, and assignments can change. Like Philip in Acts, right? Sent here, then there.
Exactly. Stay flexible, trust His leading, even when it seems roundabout.
Okay, let's tackle the big one. Funding. It feels daunting for so many people.
Yeah, intimidating is a good word. But the book starts with encouragement, right? Thinking about Jesus providing for Peter in Matthew 17.
Right, reframing it from the start. It's not just logistics, it's about faith, trusting God's provision.
Jack Rokel talks about the spiritual side, too. It's not begging. It's partnering with people in God's work. He mentions 2 Corinthians 1:11, the power of prayer support.
It's about building relationships with people who share the vision. And the book includes stories of unexpected provision through prayer. God shows up.
That perspective changes everything. It's an invitation to join in, not just asking for cash. That partnership is key.
John, the missionary in Japan, admits he did feel like he was begging at first.
Which is probably pretty common.
But he came to see it differently. It forced him to clarify his vision, and that led to really strong partnerships.
That's a great insight. The process itself can be refining. Karen from HHAB, and now Reach Beyond, mentions alternatives too, like denominational boards or tent making.
Yeah, Jay, an independent missionary, really pushes that inviting people to join God's work angle. And he explains tent making, using your job to support yourself while doing ministry.
Business is mission. He recommends globalops.org again for that, but cautions it takes a lot of time, right? Need to balance work and ministry.
Definitely. Jack Volkel also says asking for prayer is even more important than asking for money.
Foundational. And Jay warns against letting fear or pride stop you from asking. God provides through people.
Dale Pugh connects it to Romans 10.
Yeah.
How can they hear unless someone is sent? And how can they be sent without support? It's all linked.
That biblical basis is powerful. Senders and goers are interdependent.
Tom in Slovakia shares how he gave generously to missions before he went, and then saw God provide for him later. Like Luke 6.38, give and it'll be given to you.
Wow. And then there's the huge example of George Muller, trusting God alone for that orphanage. Amazing faith. The book quotes him on just relying on God's promises.
So inspiring. How long does it take to raise support? Rob from Operation Mobilization says it really varies.
No set timeline. But Bill Dillon, who wrote People Raising, suggests setting a deadline, creates focus, urgency.
Good practical tip. And Rob strongly advises not going overseas until you're fully funded. Aim for maybe 110% even, as a buffer.
Yeah, he shares a story about someone who went partly funded and faced real hardship. You want to avoid that stress if possible.
Carol from Team wraps it up nicely. Be obedient, trust God, keep your supporters in the loop, share what God is doing.
Back to those core principles, faith, obedience, communication, vital for sustainability.
Now, what about debt? That could feel like a massive roadblock. The book has a section, paid off and debt-free.
Yeah, it's a real issue for a lot of people thinking about missions. Needs a plan.
David Topazian from MedSend advises trying to minimize borrowing during training. Quotes Proverbs 22.7, "The borrower is servant to the lender. Look for scholarships. Avoid those unsubsidized loans if you can."
And Larry Burkett suggested working part-time while studying. Practical ways to avoid piling up debt.
If you do have existing debt, David Smith suggests a clear repayment plan. Or sometimes you might be able to include payments in your mission budget if the agency allows.
But credit card debt usually has to be gone first, right?
Yeah, that's a common requirement. Financial responsibility. He also encourages prayer for getting out of debt, sharing a cool story about his house selling unexpectedly well. God can intervene.
Absolutely. It takes proactive steps in seeking God's help.
Okay, shifting perspective. Thinking long term. Retirement. The book calls it ready to retire.
Might seem far off, but it's wise to think ahead, like the ant in Proverbs 30.
Some agencies have retirement packages, but the book notes it's hard for them to be both comprehensive and affordable for the agency. WEC has flexible options.
So the advice is basically plan to cover most of it yourself. Don't rely solely on the agency. Circumstances change over decades.
Pretty much. Start early, even small monthly contributions. Compounding helps over time.
Take personal responsibility for that aspect.
Jack, the missionary in North Africa, has this beautiful perspective, though. Says his retirement fund is in heaven. Focuses on the joy and eternal rewards of service.
That puts it in perspective. Tom from Campus Crusade quotes John Wesley, "Earn all you can, save all you can, give all you can." Connects giving now to God's provision later, citing Luke 6.38 again. So it's both practical planning and trusting God's ultimate provision. A balance.
Now for a really powerful theme. Vision. Sacrifice. Perseverance. It kicks off with Pastor Lorenzo in Mexico.
The one with the vision for a church building but no money.
That's him. Just stepped out in faith, believing God would provide. It captures that theme, perfectly needing vision, being willing to sacrifice, and just keep going.
Trusting God for things beyond your own ability.
And then comes that incredible story of David and Svea Flood in the Belgian Congo.
Oh, man. Heartbreaking but amazing. Initial rejection, Svea dies. But their legacy through their daughter Aggie left as a peace offering.
Discovered decades later. It shows the long-term, often unseen impact of faithfulness and sacrifice. Like John 12.24, the seed has to die to bear much fruit.
Such a profound reminder. Obedience matters, even when you don't see the results immediately. God works in ways we can't fathom.
Okay, let's get into specifics for singles, couples, and kids. Lots of questions here, starting with singles.
Yeah, important to address their unique situation.
Jack Volkel talks about the blessing of being married and raising a family on the field, how it can be a powerful witness.
But the book also shares stories of singles finding spouses after surrendering that desire. Recommends Single and Satisfied.
Yeah. Jessie, a single woman in Mexico, encourages others, go, trust God to meet your needs, even the desire for marriage.
Kyle from Pioneer says, gut, moving towards missions, keep your eyes open, don't limit God, and find a trusted couple for support.
Good practical advice. Catherine from Send warns against pursuing relationships with people who aren't mission-minded, though.
Shared vision is key. Barbell stresses being intentional about building community, those family-type bonds for singles.
What about leaving parents? David Smith reassures people God can care for parents as you obey. Many agencies have leave options for family care. He suggests the national network of parents of missionaries, too.
Addressing those real concerns is helpful. What if one spouse wants to go but the other doesn't?
Stacy from OM offers hope. If it's God's plan, he'll work through the concerns, bring unity. Requires prayer, communication, trust.
A tough situation, but not impossible with God.
What about serving with little kids? The book mentions that peace child story again, how kids can bridge gaps.
And Elizabeth notes, younger kids often adjust more easily. Dick from Sims says kids can open hearts that might otherwise be closed.
Dale Pugh even suggests MKs, missionary kids, often do well later bicultural and multilingual. Jack Volkel reassures about childbirth facilities usually being adequate.
Addressing practical worries and potential positives. What about schooling?
Lots of options. National schools, international schools, MK schools, homeschooling. David Smith mentions studies showing positive outcomes for MKs.
John provides pros and cons for each. Tom suggests maybe different options at different ages. Paul reminds us kids are resilient.
Good points. Also, check an agency's values on education before joining. And put teens first. Don't force them if they're really resistant.
Sensitivity to kids' needs is crucial. The section finishes with advice for parents sending kids and resources for women in missions. Very comprehensive.
Okay, we're at the final section, the challenge moving forward. It starts with the author's conversation with Dr. Gibson in Papua New Guinea.
Bringing it back to personal experience.
Dr. Gibson tells this story from Thailand. Needed permission from the governor for mobile clinics, was unsure, but got unexpected, enthusiastic support.
Wow. Stepping out in faith, even when uncertain.
And the book links it right to 2 Timothy 1.7. God hasn't given us a spirit of fear, but of power, love, self-discipline.
That's the core message, isn't it? Don't let fear paralyze you. God empowers you.
Exactly. Our certainty is in God, not circumstances. Moving forward in obedience actually strengthens our trust, like Isaiah 50.16 suggests.
It addresses those common fears. How do I know God's guidance? Find the right agency, the right place.
And the answer is trust God's step-by-step leading. Proverbs 3.56. He'll guide you as you go.
That's crucial encouragement. The journey unfolds one step at a time, guided by faith.
So wrapping up this deep dive into Ask a Missionary, we've seen it's a complex journey, discerning guidance, training, funding, family stuff. It all matters.
The book really provides that valuable collective wisdom, those real-world insights for anyone considering this path. It goes way beyond simplistic ideas.
We really hope this discussion has given you, the learner, a lot to think about. Reflect on what resonated, what questions came up for you.
Maybe check out the resources mentioned in the book itself, or take a small step like contacting an agency or looking into a short-term trip if you feel a prompting.
Remember, figuring this out is personal, but hopefully the experiences we've talked about offer a solid, encouraging place to start.